So welcome everyone back to day 2 of the quest for true belonging with Eugene Ellis, who is the founder and director of the Black African Asian Therapist Network. He is also the author of The Race Conversation. He's also a dear member of our community and of the T-Ratna community. And I'm looking forward to your presentation on the journey towards belonging. Eugene Ellis, can we give him a round of applause, a warm welcome, everyone?
Thank you, William. Thank you. Yeah, it's really good to hear from everybody, and just to really get a sense of who's around, and you know, your journey so far over this week or this weekend. So yeah, what am I going to talk? Well, the title of the talk is Quest for Belonging. And there was so much that I could possibly say, but what I've kind of broken it down to really is about a relationship. And the relationship I'm going to be talking about is a relationship with my father. And he is by no means the only influence in terms of my belonging or not belonging, but certainly is a sort of central person. So that's kind of what I'll be talking about. So it'll be sort of a personal journey, but I'll also be throwing in bits of information as well as we go along. And we'll also maybe have a bit of time to meditate or connect with our bodies at some level. And occasionally I'll sort of pause as well, because what I might be talking about might connect with you, maybe not directly, but maybe indirectly, and may bring up relationships, in your own relationships, maybe not with your father, but with someone else. So the invitation is really just to kind of be connected to your body, and to be as grounded as you possibly can, but we'll kind of hopefully do some things to kind of help us along the way. Really pleased to hear that someone's kind of really enjoying nature and enjoying the sky, just sort of looking up and noticing that, wow, I haven't done that for a while. It's just like so amazing. And I love this living ancestor kind of idea. It's that's really inspiring me, actually. Just in terms of my own son, who's 21. Although I've written a lot about myself, how much of it he has accessed, I don't know. But I could wait for him to ask the questions, or I could just come to him, I guess. So yeah, so really, really great. I mean, it would be good to get a sense of whether this idea of kind of sitting with yourself and sitting with your experience is new. Is it new to anyone? So I just need to just sort of check that out first, so everyone has a kind of a sense of that. Okay, so all right, excellent. So yeah, I'll just say a little bit more about myself. I'm a psychotherapist, and I've been working in the field of adoption for a long time, coming on to 20 years. And, you know, belonging is really important there. I'll say a bit about that. But so that's kind of where I've been spending my time. I don't do as much of that as I used to. I used to do that full time, and now I just do that a little bit at a time. Most of my time is spent with an organization called the Black African and Asian Therapy Network. And really a place for belonging, I guess, just like here. A place to rest, kick off your shoes, and just be with other like-minded people. We're all therapists of color, so I guess it's a particular type of community. And you know, the experience of people coming in and joining the community is of sort of feeling on their own, I guess, as a therapist, and maybe even a sense of alienation, and then sort of coming into this space. And that, yeah, and so that kind of coming into the space is often a journey in its own right. You know, something has quite a long history to it. You know, just to be able to just turn, you know, just to arrive is really a big deal. But yeah, so I started that network again almost 20 years ago. And as William said, I'm part of the Tree Ratner community. It's a Buddhist community that's been going on for quite a while. It used to be called the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order. And they have a person of color Buddhist community, which has gone through many incarnations over the years, sort of rises and falls and rises and falls. But certainly since George Floyd and COVID, you know, there's something's happened to that community, and it's kind of taken off. I guess as this one has, and many communities have, communities of color have. So and so I'm working towards what's called ordination, which is a sort of process of going on retreats and becoming a kind of it's not, yeah, I suppose it's yeah, dedicating my life to that community, and also to the Dharma, which is the teachings of the Buddha. And also my book as well that I've William sort of put up is kind of very sort of Buddhist based, and very much about the body. And in terms of belonging, it's certainly created a very interesting, for me at least, sense of belonging, and putting myself out there, and what that means is, so there's been a real journey around all of that, which I won't go into, but just to say that it has been empowering in lots of different ways. And I was reading through the stuff that William sent, and there was a quote there by Brené Brown: true belonging doesn't require you to change who you are, it requires you to be who you are. And yeah, I just thought that was very powerful. And there's this kind of idea that belonging is about, okay, this community here that you belong to, and I think that's important. But even when that's in action, there could be a sense of not belonging, even though you're with a group of people that who really want to belong to you. Yeah, so it's so there's something about that sort of inner process, I guess, which Brené is sort of talking about. So yeah, so I'm going to talk about, I mean, just in a sketched way. This is stuff that I've processed already, and I said it might be triggering, but hopefully we can find a way to. Well, yeah, I'm not sure how we're going to deal with that, and it might not be as well. So I don't want you to get too concerned about that. But so I'll talk about my growing up, and I'll talk about a little bit about the sort of some of the process of change, and also reading a poem or piece of writing, which kind of sums up everything that I think, at least in terms of my relationship with my father, and you know, and to acknowledge it wasn't just me and him. Yeah, so it was more than me and him. It was the ancestors in the background, and of course trauma, intergenerational trauma, kind of bubbling away in all of that. So I thought we'd just maybe yeah, just come into our bodies, really, just to start off with, maybe just for 5 minutes or so. And the invitation is just to yeah, it's to kind of rest in your awareness. If you want to, you can close your eyes, don't have to. And yeah, to sort of allow yourself, yeah, offering kindness, I guess, to your body, to the body. And developing a loving kindness for yourself is a journey which starts with the body. And coming into the body, coming into the sensations, letting your mind rest in sensation is a big part of that. Just noticing your breath. Not trying to change anything or control or force it, but just noticing the quality of the breath. Shallow, is it shallow? Is it deep? Quick, slow? Just allowing yourself just to be aware with the knowledge that awareness will automatically bring some kind of change. And allowing the seat to catch you. Being held by the seat that you're in. And offering loving kindness to yourself. You might want to say, I deserve to be at ease. I deserve to be cared for. I deserve to rest. May you have access to the resources that you need to be happy, to be free. May you be well. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. Just noticing the content of the mind. Content of the heart. And the feelings. And the sensations in the body. And if possible, allowing any tension, any discomfort to loosen, to soften. Okay, coming back to yourself sitting, being held by the seat. Coming back to the breath. And in your own time, coming back to the present and opening your eyes and maybe taking in the community that has momentarily been created here. Taking in the faces. So this is a brief moment in time, and we've all come together, we've created this community. It will never be like this again. The next session will be having different people and there'll be a different group. So just, yeah, really reveling in the community. So, yeah, I'm going to say, just going to, talk about growing up to start off with. So certainly when I look back in my past, I don't remember huge chunks of it. I mean, lots of it is a mystery, and you might find this is the case for you as well, or you might remember a lot. But you know, I often listen to other people talking about their school days and what the school years, and I can almost remember every detail of it. The best years of their life, they might even say. And that wasn't the case for me. And you know, there's a lot of there was a few school reunions on offer a few years ago, and that just filled me with dread. You know, I just thought, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I did in the end, and but there was a lot of anxiety around it. People would come up to me and say, "Oh, yeah, huge. God, you remember this? Remember that?" And I'm going, "No idea what you're talking about." I pretended I might know their names, and so there's a lot of shame about that. And as you know, as I look back at myself, I kind of look back with compassion. I need to note that I was living with trauma, and I was basically in fear most of the time. And what I know is that if your nervous system is in fear, you know, creating memories is probably the last thing it's interested in doing. Probably more focused on fight and flight. Where is the danger? How am I going to get around it? You know, that was that was the state of my life. It felt like, and the main object of fear, certainly at that time, although at the time I don't think I'd kind of localized it in a particular way, but certainly when I was reflecting back as a young man, and my father was that main object, and he died in 2004 from pneumonia after suffering a stroke. He was living in Jamaica at the time with my mother and my younger sister, and he went back. So he came over in the 60s and then left in the early 90s back to Jamaica. And so, yeah, and so there was quite a few of our siblings, so I wasn't alone as such, but and I, you know, even that wasn't really even registered by me. It was just, oh, that's what's going to happen, and off they went. And I just sort of got on with my life. And there were sort of two pervading stories. The first, hang on, I'm just going to bring this thing down because the sun's right in my eyes. There were sort of two stories. One sort of outside story, which was a story of my dad. He was a craftsman. He was skillful. He was generous towards the local community. And that just seemed to flower even more when he was in Jamaica. And the way he was talked about in the community was very, yeah, it was with a lot of love, I guess, a lot of love and a lot of pride. And he could do no wrong, really, in people's eyes. And so there was this kind of mismatch between what they were saying and my sort of experience, which was the more sort of hidden stories of the inside a family while he was in the UK. There was no doubt that moving back to Jamaica had revealed a different side to him, or maybe he went back to how he was before. Certainly his experience in the UK changed him. Going back to Jamaica brought him back from somewhere. But certainly while he was in Jamaica, the silence around his experience, he didn't need to talk about anything really. So his experience here in the UK sort of led to these huge explosions of rage and really, because that wasn't really spoken about, it was just kind of unresolved. I still felt disconnected with him and essentially with myself. And with the rage came beatings, and I guess if you're from Caribbean community at least, that seems to be the order of the day. You just get beatings, sometimes for no reason whatsoever. You just knew that something was wrong, and you had something to do with it. So fear was steeped into my body and had impacted almost every aspect of my life. And was a real barrier, I guess, to belonging. A real barrier, this sort of fear that was just there. Yeah. So when it comes to belonging, sometimes we either we feel we belong, or we don't belong, or we feel that we only belong where we don't want to belong. And my experience of myself was the latter. I only belonged where I didn't really want to belong. So it's not that I didn't feel belonging, but the communities that I felt connected to on some level weren't necessarily the communities I wanted to connect to. But I didn't really know where I wanted to belong. So my sense of belonging was completely unknown to me. I didn't really have even a sense of it. It was just what was going on at the time. And in my work, I've witnessed the power of belonging or not belonging from the outside looking in my therapeutic work in adoption and fostering. This idea of being removed from your birth mother. You spend 9 months in the womb, and there's this kind of rhythm that you've come to know, the rhythm of the sounds and the rhythm of the smells and the movement. All of that rhythm gets into your cells, gets into you. Yeah, and then when you make that transition from the womb into the world, being born, it's really comforting to be in that same rhythm. There's this sort of sense of being able to relax, depending on what's going on, of course, when you come out of the room. But that sort of sense of belonging, kind of that transition, kind of stays intact. The baby doesn't really know much about itself apart from this rhythm that it's used to. And this idea of, and certainly in adoption or fostering, there's this break away, maybe not at birth, but maybe afterwards. Sometimes at birth too, from that rhythm. And that sort of sets up the scene for hypersensitivity to not belonging. And you can really feel that play itself out through life. It's very, very powerful to see, very, very powerful to watch. Sometimes people are adopted or maybe adopted from birth, just think we've got a clean slate here. Shouldn't be anything to worry about. Attachment to the new parents and everything. But underneath all of that, there's this kind of unreachable, almost unreachable sort of hurt and dis-ease around experience. So that's very powerful to communicate to me, that there's kind of this idea of belonging is very powerful, and it sort of really drives being content, being able to relax, or not content and not relaxing. So yeah. But I hadn't really experienced that type of rupture to belonging. So instead, I guess my sort of rupture to belonging is really about internalizing intergenerational trauma, the playing out of trauma between generations, my generation, my father's generation, and that had closed down my vitality, my sense of agency. I was focused on danger instead of safety, instead of exploration, instead of joy, I guess, relationship, all those things. And my experience of myself was as if I was in a sort of tortoise shell, and I've done lots of sort of creative art things around that time, and it's only images really can capture the sense of it. So yeah, there's this sort of tortoise shell image, me in a bag with sort of my eyes popping out. Those kinds of images. That's kind of how it was, and the sense was of a sort of a grayness, I guess. Yeah, it wasn't always like that. There were these moments of joy and stuff. So it wasn't all like that. But there's when I look back at the times around connection and belonging, that's kind of where things started to, sort of felt the shame, I guess. It was a shame, probably more than anything. And the sense of alienation is important to belonging. And so I just want to say a bit about alienation. And where there's alienation, there's oppression, but there's also something else. There's almost like a deception. There's also a kind of a deception there as well, and that deception is kind of there as it's almost like an unconscious stuff that's going on. We're not supposed to know that we're oppressed. We're not really supposed to know it. We are, but we're kind of, sometimes it's a journey just to get to that sense of being oppressed, and sometimes the outside world needs to tell you that, normally through relationship, but also if you're oppressed and feel alienated, the last thing that's in your mind is to connect through relationships. So you're kind of stuck in this kind of sort of non-ending cycle. So oppression is not meant to be noticed or seen or experienced or responded to. It's almost as if there's like an unconscious process. It just is. And the experience for me was it was just me. That was my experience. It's just me. And I think that is kind of like, the sort of central experience, I think, of alienation, of trauma, intergenerational trauma, repression. We are dependent on family. We're dependent on the wider society that we live in. And, we try to make meaning of all of that, and we try to do things that are going to deliver us something back, facilitate our survival. And sometimes there's a big cost, and that's normally around separating, alienating aspects of the self in order to survive in the situation. So denial is very powerful, a very powerful protection from alienation. And we use denial to protect ourselves from pain. To really know what it, to know means that you have to feel, and we don't always want to feel the pain. If we don't feel the pain, we can at least stay calm, and we can get on with our lives. And there's something that is co-created between the self and the other that it sort of deeply compromises our humanity. So as I said, there's something taken and there's something projected in that process. And projection really here means a kind of taking unwanted emotions or traits that you don't like about yourself and sort of throwing them out over there, this kind of othering process. Thinking about colonialism, which I guess is the sort of intergenerational legacy that I'm talking about. There were resources that were taken, so that was, in that instance, that was taken. But there was also a projection onto the colonized that they were less than. They were robbed, and they were felt to, they were made to feel grateful for it. So there's sort of a story there, something taken and something projected back. So the experience of being objectified or othered is internalized, and then we spend a long time, sometimes the rest of our lives, trying to figure it out. With alienation, as I said, there's something taken away and something projected. In terms of my relationship with my father, or my father's trauma reenactments, what was taken away really was my sense of agency and feeling of empowerment. And what was projected onto me was that whatever I did wasn't right. It wasn't wasn't the right way to do things, or the way it should be. And yeah, there's lots of incidents of that kind of narrative in various different ways. So the antidote to alienation is not being alone, and being connected to and discovering the lost or unknown parts of ourselves in relationship with like-minded others. So through a healing process, I had come to know that, as well as a way of expelling frustration while in the UK, my father's explosions of anger and beatings were a generations-old strategy to ensure that I repressed any notions of rebellion, and that this kept my body out of harm's way and away from the real danger that was located outside the home, especially in the UK. It's generally not on an oppressed person's radar to connect with others, as I said, so we do need a bit of persuading. There is also a lot of loss that has been denied, which needs to be grieved for. And these things take a long time to recover. Being in therapy with a Black man was where, for the first time, I'd really looked at the relationship with my father and our connection in any meaningful way. And along with therapy, the process of writing and drawing and artwork had also allowed me to explore my relationship in a way that did not rob us of the history and context that had shaped us. Without reference to our history and our ancestors, it felt it would not have been possible to both communicate the hurt of our relationship and also bring compassion, forgiveness, and understanding to the moment of ancestral time that my father and I found ourselves in when I was a child. I wrote this piece that I'm going to read whilst on a Buddhist retreat, where I was reflecting both on the ancestors I knew and the ancestors I did not. And this piece is called The Cry of the Ancestors. Black, naked, bound and beaten, a crushed heart inside a broken soul. Sons and daughters bear witness. This was once a man. Black, naked, fearful and fertile. White faces bright with eyes of lust for a mixing of the blood. Sons and daughters bear witness. This was once a woman. Hardy limbs, black and plentiful, claim unspeakable horrors, more beast than human. Sons and daughters bear witness. This was once a people. Daddy, this is our legacy. But what of us playing our part in this dance from the past, with no balm to soothe the corners of the mind, which lock away that loveless dread, that which is our inheritance? With your muscle and sinew giving up a little of the mind's secret, as they smash and grind and silently scream, with only a small child's fear, with only a small child's cry of fear and bewildered confusion, as a mirror into a time one should have long forgot. But it's enough. It's enough to ensure that this corner of the world's suffering does not go unnoticed. After many years of unlocking the unsayable, I want you to know that I have heard you. I've heard your plea. I know that you have journeyed through this system they call race, that chisels away at your bigness and brings with it large and small humiliations that stir the depths of shame, with sons and daughters bearing witness to what was once a man. I heard the cry of the ancestors through your fists and gritted teeth. Fight and perish, cower and survive. Daddy, I hear your plea. There is no place for vulnerability in this world for you or for me. How I wish we could have looked at each other with kindly eyes, that we could have shared a moment without fear, that we could have been vulnerable together, like I now know it's possible to be. Daddy, you follow the call, the ancestral call, and for that I am grateful. Willingly I step forward with my personal sacrifice in hand to bring words to the wordless and feeling to the hurt. So that trying to find a way to honor all of our relationship, not just me and him, felt really important. It took a long time to get there. It was my focus is on us, the two of us, and of course there was so much more going on. And it's hard to understand how liberating it can be to connect with others, especially when it's just me narrative has been running for whatever, for whenever you can remember. Being with others of like mind is transformative to the experience of belonging. Even though I had no real sense of what that means in terms of transformation, I dived into the process anyway. This was a part of a sort of therapy journey, starting off with therapy groups, understanding that, you know, the kinds of things I saw on Coronation Street in EastEnders weren't just play. That these things actually happened in real life. People did, yeah, bring all of themselves to their relationships, and then creating Barton, which was a sort of another extension of that. Of course, it was created. Barton, the Black and Asian Therapy Network, was created, of course, yes, to create these spaces where people could meet and find a sort of safe harbor in a sea of hurt, but on a purely selfish process, I guess. It was creating a community for myself. It was a place for peer support, but also a place for me to experience belonging. It's been where I've learned to develop and grow my sense of belonging in a place with others that I want to belong to. I know now that I can be vulnerable and be met by people who are awake to racialized hurt and who look like me, who look like my brothers and sisters. I also know that I can be with someone else's vulnerability and offer them something that moves them towards healing. The pain of knowing often inhibits healing, but it's the pain of knowing that also facilitates healing and heals the wounds of belonging. So that's kind of sort of come to the end of that. So thank you for listening. It's yeah, I don't quite know what to say at this point. I'm feeling yeah. I mean, you know, I think there's one thing to write it or to kind of know what I'm going to say, and then there's another part of it is actually saying it. So the part of me that feels a little bit raw, but I think that's kind of part of the process. I think at this point, we've sort of been together for about an hour here. So what I think we could do, I have to sort of consult William here, is maybe yeah, maybe hear from people what you know, how has that presentation impacted you, and then we maybe find a way to get back into our bodies again after that. So yes, so yeah, so any thoughts, reflections, connection?
Right. Gosh, it's left me a bit both still and speechless. Your narrative, your courage, the connections that you've made with all of the intersectionalities of trauma, and how you've transformed that into a community which just helps so many other people. You know, Black African Asian Therapist Network is really well established now, 20 years, and MNPC would not be here, you know, if it wasn't for you and the work that we would not be here, because we first started through your network, and many other people started what they were doing through you. So I'm here because of you, you know, because of your suffering and how you transformed it. And actually, there aren't a lot of men. Yeah, I am here because of you, Eugene, you know, and look what's happened to the MNPC. But there's not a lot of men also coming out forward with their stories about their fathers and the impact of slavery or oppression or loss. And most of these spaces are inhabited by women. And so by you being here tonight, and opening up, it creates the energy and hopefully the intention that the time has come really for men to challenge themselves, particularly within Black communities, to come forward and open up or begin to heal the absent father wound, which is an area of that really interests me enormously, and I can definitely connect with, and I could feel the discomfort arising, and I'm like, oh, within my own body. So, thank you. Can everyone please turn the cameras on for a minute so Eugene can see you? He's sharing his vulnerability, and show Eugene where you are in this moment. What are you about? Just a moment of stillness, a moment of just sending our love to Eugene, to your dad.
Yeah, thank you, William. Just to respond to that, I mean, I feel I have a very strong feminine aspect to me, which actually, the more I've been able to express that, the more I've been able to express other aspects of me as well. Maybe, I mean, I'm using feminine and masculine in particular ways, but more masculine energies has sort of been released at the same time. So it's like a bottle. Is kind of like, you can't just open it up and allow some things out. You have to open it up and everything comes out, or you just put the top back on. So and I've been learning to live with that, or to express that feminine aspect more and more. And I guess most of the spaces I go to are feminine, are women based, but I think it's and I think it's appreciated by men.
So Eugene, I'm wondering if we can go into breakout rooms, unless we can. There's two things we can do here. We can do any questions or comments for Eugene, and we can go into breakout rooms also, and then come back out of the breakout rooms and have another conversation around the absent father issue, right?
Yeah. Can I just say something, Eugene?
Beverly.
I really felt you were also talking about mothers and daughters. That kind of dynamic. And first of all, I love your poem. Is it in your book?
It's in the book, yeah. It's in the book, yeah.
Great. And I just felt, because I'm at a particular stage in my life, that I've come to recognize that, sometimes the way our parents behaved, especially if you're a sensitive child, but actually all that they were doing was actually about keeping us safe. Because I remembered some years ago just questioning my mom, and she actually really didn't feel that anything was wrong. And and then when you realize, if we really open ourselves up, you have to let anything go that you thought of the past, because it was like a tale and we keep rehearsing it. And then one day I just realized things that happened didn't happen out of really maliciousness. They did what they knew to do. You know that Maya Angelou, when you know better, you do better. And sometimes they just didn't know better, because who was actually teaching them? Slaves of slaves of slaves, enslaved people. But now we know better. So I guess with our own children, I guess our legacy that we have to leave must be a better one.
Mm. Yes. I think it's a mix, isn't there? Because sometimes, you know, people are human, and you know, stress and pain and you know, you know, people can just sort of release their tension through the people who are close to them. So there's definitely a big, you know, part of that. But there's also a big part of, as you say, protection. You know, viewing the world outside as or potentially more dangerous out there than it is, you know, these than what they were doing. So there was a, you know, big protection thing there too, and that was real. You know, there wasn't it wasn't like made up. It was a real. So it wasn't something of the mind. And we're living in slightly different times now in terms of that immediate sense of danger. Danger is still there, but it doesn't feel quite so immediate as it did. Yeah.
Because it's morphed into something else.
Yeah.
And I think your poem says it. When you start in your poem, you say something, and this is a man. Can you read that first? Can you read that first, those first two stanzas again?
Yeah. Let me slide it. Okay. Yeah. Black, naked, bound and beaten, a crushed heart inside a broken soul. Sons and daughters, bear witness. This was once a man. Black, naked, fearful and fertile, white faces bright with eyes of lust for a mixing of the blood. Sons and daughters bear witness. This was once a woman.
Yeah. And that was it. Bear witness.
Yeah.
And I think we are the ones that are bearing witness. And I think this is why we are really in a pivotal time of change. Because this is the first time in the last 2 years I've seen so many Black people. We've come together to talk about this. And we're not running, we're not afraid anymore. Because what can they do to us? What can a white majority actually now do to us when everything has already been done?
Mm. 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 Yes. And I think that the sort of shutting down of the self and the narrative of your history, which was just like standard in my parents' generation, is we know that doesn't work, and that we need to tell our stories. So yeah, and that's what we're doing. We're bearing witness to each other.
Any other questions for Eugene? Anyone else before we do a breakout room?
I would like to add something. It's Paul in here. Yes, I really appreciate what Eugene has shared in terms of his relationship with his father and what he went through. But sometimes do we understand what the Black male goes through? A Black male that came from the Caribbean as an adult is going to be a different experience from a Black male growing up, from school. So sometimes I look at the Black males that came here and the ones who were born here. So we all have different experiences based on where we're brought up. And sometimes I can't imagine what it's like for the Caribbean immigrants to come here and not find accommodation, not find jobs, be highly qualified and be just treated in a dehumanizing way. So sometimes, yes, my parents beat me. So, whatever they did, I understand what they did, but I can't imagine the harshness that they went through, the brutality of coming here from their homeland. So sometimes you don't look at what they went through, and sometimes what they did, it was to protect us because you could be killed at that time. Today, you can be killed. Our men can be killed driving a car if they meet the wrong policeman. So sometimes you forget all the wonderful things that they've done, Caribbean, African, from the 60s onwards. And it's still here in different ways, where men are stopped in the street. If they meet the wrong policeman, they could end up dead or somebody. So it hasn't really changed a lot of it. So we have to acknowledge what our parents go through and what we today go through.
Yes, and thank you. And this talk is about, you know, that belonging, non-belonging thing. But, you know, I got a lot. There's so much more I got from my father as well. You know, the sense of serving the community, the sense of working hard. You know, all those kind of things are really important to not to sideline as. So yeah, and black men were the target of white men, white males. That's just a fact of it, in a particular kind of way. And as you're right, people died, and they could die if they did the wrong thing, if they rebelled in a particular kind of way, if their voices were raised in a particular kind of way. So my dad was ensuring that I didn't die.
I'm just trying to formulate my thoughts. A lot of what you said was so familiar and recognizable. And I guess kind of where my mind is going, I guess kind of even kind of mixed in with the talk this morning and yesterday, and this theme of belonging. Because like the word, you know, we say the word belonging, and then we all have different definitions and different understandings. And so kind of where my mind is when I was listening, it was kind of moving between like the individual and then the larger stories, and all these parallels of stories that affect our stories. And also this kind of healing, because I'm a counsellor, I'm actually a member of Barton. And so a lot of times when I think about the healing aspect, when we're working with the individual, I think of how those interventions, how those conversations that we work through with an individual in regard to their stories, how we can broaden that out as a community, as a collective, to kind of use our experiences, use our history, use our parents' history, our parents' experiences, ancestors, and heal and grow and develop. So that's kind of, as you were talking, that's where my mind was going, and it kind of linked into the living ancestors kind of theme. That whole kind of, there's a call and there's a pull towards us starting to have these conversations. And I wonder if you have thoughts on how we can broaden out what we know from like therapeutic interventions into community stuff.
Yeah, I think I think there's something about the individual individual kind of communications and connections, and the sense of trust that can be formed through that. But I think also where I found the most power is in the group, and if we're going to sort of therapeutically doing work together, does actually bring in quite a lot of the sort of ancestral, a lot of the history, a lot of this idea of community, witnessing other people, moving away from it's just me kind of paradigm, which is very, very strong within oppression, is really, really important, I think. So to me, that's the way forward, is this kind of group process. but also the group is also can be the source of danger. So there is another kind of often the group itself is where the danger lies for a lot of people of color. So yeah, but I think trying to find a way over that and doing a kind of a group therapy, if that's the word, or group, some kind of process around the group, and is for me where the healing really lies. Although you can't say the individual doesn't work either, because I think there's something about that too. But I think primarily, I think it's a group process.
Great.
Yes.
I'd love to share before you go for the break, William, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Eugene, thank you so much for your share today. And there's so much resonates for me. And even just currently in my life, I'm sitting with this, this complex trauma and intergenerational stuff. And so the adult in me totally gets all this, right? It really does. And all the colonial legacies, my father, like yours, it wasn't safe in my home. It wasn't safe in my home. I was afraid all the time of my father's anger and physical abuse. And he didn't have a way to process all that. And I've forgiven and I've worked through all of that. The adult in me has. And yet, when I get triggered with other things that come up, it's the child in me that gets triggered, the child that didn't have that attachment, that didn't feel that sense of belonging, that didn't. So I'm always sitting with both. I understand my father's pain and suffering. He shared it with me and I learned a lot. And also there was a program on BBC Two recently about Asian family in Birmingham, and that could have been my family. And they were just going back. It was just so powerful. It just brought up so much stuff in terms of, oh my goodness, I really got to understand more deeply what my parents went through coming to this country. But somebody shared about, well, what do we do here in this sense of belonging? And it's been voiced in this room right today, part of it. I mean, yes, the group work, but then the words that we use that I thought really powerful, the living ancestors. We're living ancestors, where somebody used the word stewardship, right? I use the word as well, eldership, right? So let us parent those children. Let's parent those adults who are still, we do it through our therapies and our counseling and all that, but we can do it every day in our communities, in the group, with our children, with our neighbors, with, let's steward them. Let's support them, knowing that we're all coming from this trauma, from all this intergenerational trauma and all the other oppression that in different ways that we've experienced, So it's just so wonderful to have this space to be able to share all this. And thank you, Eugene, because that was really, I was frozen for a bit because it was really just touched with some real core aspects. And I love my father. I knew he was trying to protect me, us, but he had never been able to protect himself, and then didn't really know how to do that. That was in a safe way, and I and my siblings and, well, our whole family were affected, not just by him, but how, each other really, So thank you, really.
Thank you, Eugene.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. And you have been witnessed tonight. You have been witnessed by all of us. You've been witnessed this space. So we'll have a 10-minute break, come back at 12:30, and then maybe some breakout rooms, and we'll finish in half an hour. Libation ritual also with my little tree here, where we can do a dedication. If any of you haven't done so, then this is a really good opportunity to add your libation, which will be planted in the forest, and some community members will, well, you'll all be invited to West Sussex. I don't know where you are, but you'll all be invited to the plea, but we'll film it if you can't make it. But enjoy a break and see you in 10 minutes.